large audience tonight. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone. Do we have a motion to come out of closed session?
I move that the school board, having been in closed session pursuant to a proper motion, come out of closed session.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Next up is certification of our closed session. Do we have a certification?
I move that the school board, having been in closed session pursuant to a proper,
Done that one.
we did that one?
Yep, certification.
That's what I clicked on. Oh, you know what? They were both highlighted.
I
Okay.
gotta say, is it slow?
Sorry. It's slow. The computer is, not me. All right. So, whereas the Franklin City School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law, now therefore be it resolved that the Franklin City School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, 1, only public business matters lawfully exempted by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and 2, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
I missed part of that. Would you read it again, please?
Ditto. Ditto.
Kidding.
We have a motion and we have a second. And Mr. Holt has had his discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. And look who is with us in person this week, Dr. Sterling.
That's why we're all so giddy.
Next up is motions from closed session. We had personnel agenda and the personnel addendum. Do y'all want to take them separate, or do you want to just do one motion for both?
One motion for both.
Okay, so do we have a motion to approve the personnel agenda and the personnel addendum?
I so move to approve.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Next up, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion in regards to the agenda?
I move we approve the agenda as written.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. That brings us to the consent agenda. We've got a few items up there. The first one is budget adjustment. You may recall, you may not recall from previous years, that usually twice a year we look at the instruction line item, which is where all of our salaries and benefits and everything come out of. And as you all know, if we have a position that we haven't filled that we're filling with a long-term sub, that creates some leftover money in that line item. And then we look at reallocating that for other needs that we have elsewhere. So that's what we're looking at with that. That's our second time a year for that part. And then you've got the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery funds, that $119,000 line item at the bottom. That's the first item. Second item is purchase order for, remember how we had talked about that, we call it the HVAC grant, the one that requires the $200,000 match. Pause there for just a second. Let me back up to the other one. Tammy, you do not need to go back. The reason why we're looking at going ahead and approving that budget adjustment tonight is it takes 2 weeks to get it onto the city's agenda. So if we don't, and it waits until next week, then it won't go on their agenda for their regular meeting until the end of So and knowing how it takes to get things ordered and in and trying to get all that, trying to get that on the city's agenda. That's why we're looking at going ahead and getting that approved so that when we're ready, we can go ahead and get it to the city. The HVAC, that's the evaporator. Remember that big cooling tower behind SP Morton? So this is looking at going ahead and getting that approved again, because we know how it is to order supplies at this point. Mr. Ryder, did you have anything to comment on that?
No, that's just the cooling tower that we have that 100% local match requirement. So of the 238,000, half of that 118 and change will come from the federal government.
Okay. Next, anything else, Mr. Ryder? You good? You good on that one? Yes, he nodded yes. Okay. 3.3 VACORP, for those of us that have been here before, you know that every year we have that come before us for approval for our VACORP insurance package. That's our workers' compensation. It covers if there's a student accident, all of that. So this is just our annual renewal of that. That is not where I wanted to go. Next behind that is the superintendent's designee, and this is the person that would be signing if the superintendent cannot. Typically, yes, I know this is for next year, but typically we do that prior to the end of the year so that it's ready to roll on July 1. So designee, we're looking at Mr. Ryder again. And then 3.5 is an overnight field trip request for the track and field team to James Madison University in Harrisonburg for states. Any questions on any of those 5 items? Hearing none, do we have a motion in regard to the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Consent agenda passes. Moving right along, we are making record time tonight. Financial report, Mr. Ryder, right back to you.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Tonight's report is as of March 31st. It's the end of the month. And I'll go right into it. The funds had we have now decided that in the last quarter of this fiscal year, it's time to begin showing a projection column. There were so many variables in the last couple of months, we decided not to show that because the bottom line was fluctuating wildly. And Department of Education. So nothing to be worried about there. So, and you know, whatever this is, or whatever it is, it's going to be a zero bottom line. So right now, March 31st, you're at negative $234,000 there. That was nothing more than the February expenditures. So we're perfectly fine there. And so the overall, when you take into account the, you know, the Fund 10 surplus right now, so that doesn't surprise me that it's a $500,000 surplus at March 31st, but then the overall projected, but it should be close to zero in a perfect year, but this year, you know, with the textbook and the cafeteria deficits that we're supposed to have, we'll have a slight deficit overall. Any questions on the financial statements for March?
Any questions for Mr. Ryder?
Yes.
I think we're good.
Oh, okay. The next presentation, you know, for those of you who are not familiar with the goings on in Richmond, or the three branches of government, just like federal, the three branches of government present and debate their versions of what they want to spend. And so when it comes to the school divisions in Virginia, the governor always issues his or hers in December, and then the other two branches follow along in January, February. You know, these budgets are there, it's what they're asking for. And they're asking each other. And so they have to negotiate and, you know, course trade until they get down to the final figures. Last year, that was June 30th, well after we had to adopt our budget, which is one of the reasons why we have our reallocation entry, because they didn't pass the state budget until after we had already adopted it. So here are the three versions. The only thing I did here, a lot of the numbers are pretty close, you know. I didn't feel, you know, I'm not going to read this whole thing. So everything to the left of that big blue line there, that's what was used for me to create next year's budget. That's the fiscal 2023 estimate that I used for state revenue. Everything to the right of the horizontal, the vertical blue line, are the three versions. And the only thing about the yellows are just, you know, really big differences. You can see how big of a difference they are. I mean, the governor asked for $146,000 for vocational. The House and the Senate want $452,000. Big differences. Probably then going down at the at-risk down there, down lower, you know, 438 is what I used for the estimate next year. The House is at 539. That's close, but the governor wants $1 million for that. So does the Senate. Probably the biggest, starkest, you know, thing is the next line. Now the construction, school construction, the governor put in $1,361,000. The Senate backed him up on $1,361,000. The House doesn't want to give us anything at all. So wild fluctuations between these governments. The next one down, the governor asked for $31,000 for the Grove Street tax levy harmless, and the Senate wants to give us $111,000. So you know, so it goes on line after line. On the next slide, kind of a big difference. So the big green circle over there at $8,837,000, that's what I used to create the fiscal 23 budget. But you can scroll down, and so, but down.
Having technical difficulties.
There we go. And so, the governor's overall, 11,000,006. The House version, 10,243,000. The big reason for that difference is the House version eliminates the construction grant, but then the Senate version, all the way to the right, puts it back in and actually adds on to the governor's. So, as we go down to the next slide, answer is this. These budgets are in the negotiation phase, and they could change drastically. It's even possible, I mean, I've seen it, they throw them all out and start over. I believe this legislature has met 2, 3, 4 times already. They can't come to agreement. So for me to take one of these and use it, I don't know. It's not irresponsible. It's just that I wouldn't, since I don't have to, we don't have to adopt something for a little while. We got all kinds of time. I would rather wait until they get closer and closer. But believe me, we have to adopt our budget, maybe 9th or something. So, we'll give it a couple of weeks. And I think the worst case scenario is we just go with the budget I've already presented, and then we'll just amend it. We'll just pass it. We'll just, do a budget amendment in July or August and have the actual final numbers. So, yeah, and so like I said, the worst thing we can do is use one of these budgets and it comes in lower than that, then we have to amend it backwards, and that's always a bad one. So does anybody have questions on the state funding version?
I don't have a question. I'm just really surprised to see how drastic those fluctuations are. And I think it's definitely a good idea to not jump on one of them and, to wait to see. Or, like you said, maybe even put in a budget adjustment because, they're not even close.
No.
They really are. Wow. Thank you for sharing that because I really didn't realize that they were that far off.
Yeah. I believe me, I hope the Senate version comes through, with the construction grant and more than the government
Right.
proposed.
Well, as you pointed out, Mr. Ryder, the final numbers are a lot closer than it would appear when you look at the individual line items that you highlight in yellow.
Yeah, especially when you take out the school construction
Right.
line item.
So, and the way they had these allocated, that's how the money has to be spent. There's no,
You mean like each line item within the budget, like if
Right,
they're
it-
allocating it for ESL, that's the pocket that we have to spend on English as a second language.
Right.
Now, from the state funding,
Right.
from the state level funding. Now, we could, allocate from a different funding source than the state, but that's what the state would be giving us.
right. So, all right. So the state funds have to be spent in whatever category it's allocated. Okay.
Yeah, and as I'm looking at the slide above the last one, one thing I didn't even note this, but the line item for special education regional tuition, that's very hopeful. Because our funding this year is like $192,000, but all three budgets are the same figure at $212. Some relief finally on the CSEP bills. Those dollars are specifically allocated just to CSEP. So that's good news. You know what? I just noticed something again. Look up at the school breakfast, Fund 8.
Yeah, that's a huge change.
That goes from 6,700, and they all are at 38,005. I gotta show that to Melissa Vargas. I just noticed that myself. Good for her.
Any other questions for Mr. Ryder on the state proposed budget? All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ryder. Next up, Human Resources, Dr. White.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Superintendent. Tonight I will be presenting to you three contracts, three different types of personnel contracts for your first review. We have our annual, our continuing, and then our letter of interest. We wanted to let you know that we are setting timelines for distribution of the contracts. We want to be able to have all contracts distributed by May 20th. So that's our goal. Any questions about the contracts? And you guys have copies of those in the dockets. Any questions? Okay. Next, we have human resource updates. We have been busy already in the month of April. So we had our regional job fair with Emporia on April 5th. That was Tuesday. We were at Shawan University Wednesday, April 6th. And on April 15th, we'll have a virtual job fair at Phoenix University. We'll also be visiting in the month of April our local universities. We'll be going to Virginia State, Old Dominion, Christopher Newport, Norfolk State, Virginia Wesleyan, Hampton University, and Elizabeth City University. And our hope is that we will be able to meet and greet with students, potential students from School of Education. And we'd also like to possibly meet with some students from School of Psychology and other areas that may be interested in going into education. So any questions? And now I have the pleasure of introducing to you a rollout that we're putting in place. We are going to initiate a Welcome Home campaign, and what we're going to be doing is inviting about 170 former employers to apply for positions in Norfolk Public Schools, and so we're inviting them back home. We are trying to think outside the box as we look into recruitment and ways to fill our teaching positions in the district. So we are really excited about this, and we can't wait to share how the results turn out. So we are really, really excited about our Welcome Home campaign. Any questions about the Welcome Home campaign?
Kind of like a homecoming.
Yes, there's going to be, and you know what? We have one already. Aaron Singer coming back home, so we're excited. We're excited. We're anticipating getting quite a few. And then lastly, I get to introduce to you our new staff for Franklin City Public Schools. So we have for S.P. Morton, Truancy Officer, Essence Turner. We have Exceptional Teacher Assistant, Tanisha Smith at Joseph P. King. Jennifer Sneeringer, Guidance Counselor at S.P. Morton. Aisha Pope, COVID Testing Coordinator at Central Office. We have Janika Cross, Kindergarten Teacher, Samuel P. Morton Elementary School. Cassandra Howery, Guidance Counselor, S.P. Morton Elementary School. Ms. Deaver King is our Director of Exceptional Education. We have Mr. Braxton Cooper, who is a 6th grade English teacher at JPK, 6th grade English long-term sub-teacher at JPK. We have Mr. Tyler Frolick, 3rd grade teacher at SP Morton. Mr. Christopher Williams, 6th grade inclusion teacher at JPK. And then we have 2 substitute teachers, Ms. Kendall Brown, substitute at SP Morton, and Ms. Jaleesa Pierce, substitute at Joseph P. King. So, if you see them or you're out and about in our schools, please give them a warm Franklin City Public Schools welcome. And that's all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. White. And so I'll be curious to see those 170 former employees coming back. Hopefully we can snag some back in for Franklin City Public Schools. All right, moving right along. Next up, department updates. We have operations and Dr. Carter.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
evening.
Good evening.
All right, I'm here to bring to you an update of what's happening in our operations department. So I would like to thank Mr. Phil Sherman for his gracious time and walking with me back twice. We had 2 meetings, and we're actually scheduled for a 3rd meeting because just like today, as soon as we got on the roof at Franklin, we were going to go on the roof, and at SP Morton, and it just poured, and so we just said we'll cancel that, and we'll reschedule another date. But when we walked up there, basically, as you can see, those are the 2 dates, and then these are the next steps and recommendations. So we will review the city inspector's recommendations, and then we'll have a department recommendations for next steps will be submitted to the superintendent's office for approval. So that's where we are with the walkthrough. And then I sent him a thank you letter And this is aligned to our capital improvement priorities. And so we walk through and talk through every single one of these priorities. And I'm sure you have read that, so I'll just basically get down to the parts where it will have required permits, such as the roofing replacement at Franklin High School and SP Morton. You'll see the structural assessment that will need a permit at Franklin High School and elementary school, the breezeway at the high school, the cooling tower, which you just had the purchase order there, and then you see the JPK modular, and then you would see the upgrade in electrical systems at the high school. We just discussed that, so it's just a review, the roofs at the elementary school and the high school. You see the cooling tower, you see the module, you see the structural assessment, the plumbing, that has to be addressed at the middle school, and then the upgrades at the middle school and the high school for water fountains. So the roof at both facilities have reached their end-of-life expectancy, and so we're going to bring in a third opinion. So the city inspector said that it's relatively in fair to poor condition and can be possibly patched, but that would mean that it's about a 5-year lifespan maximum if you want to do that, and that aligns to the assessment that we had back in 2013, where it was fair to poor, and they did patchwork there as well. And you can see that it was very, very expensive. I looked at the old records; it was well over $600,000 just to patch, and so it's already, and that again, it's a 5-year life expectancy, and so that's a situation where decisions have to be made, but we're going to get a third assessment. Any questions?
Are we required to get a third assessment? Why are we going for the third assessment if we have an idea of the direction we want to go?
Well, the third assessment is that, do you want to patch or do you want to put on a new roof? And so just to get another estimate of what needs to be done. We just want to make sure, because it's an awful lot of money, and we want to make sure that we are very prudent in what we want to do.
With the leaks and everything that we have and all this fabulous weather like today that we've had, is it causing, like, what's the risk of waiting on another opinion? Like, damage that the water is currently causing?
Well, you're looking at either patching it, which is
Right.
if you patch it, it's still going to be very, very expensive.
Right, I got that.
Yes,
What I'm saying is, like, while we're waiting on a third opinion, we're neither patching nor replacing, we're still leaking.
Yes, we are still.
And we're
looking-
still incurring, like, issues with the leak. And that's my concern, like, how long are we willing to wait for yet another assessment before we decide to either patch or replace?
Right. So what we really want to know, with high school, we have that concrete evidence of that. The last assessment we really want on the elementary school, and so that's why we're looking at bringing someone else out. So the high school, we have more information than we actually have on the elementary school.
How quick of a turnaround are we looking at on that third assessment?
A week.
Okay.
Yeah, it can be a week. 'Cause as soon as they come up, as soon as we get it initiated, they will immediately generate the report.
Not that I want.
So it's not it's not a long turnaround, Ms.
Right,
Johnson.
and I think that was more what your concern was
Okay.
is it gonna
Right.
take us a month?
Right,
Is it
I'm
gonna take
saying,
us 2
like,
months?
to be determined, waiting, and,
Yeah,
like,
yeah, once he comes out, it's a very fast turnaround.
But Board Member Johnson is correct, because this is a part of our capital improvement plan, so even if we get an assessment that says we need to get this done tomorrow, the funds still have to be secured.
right.
And that can be, we don't know how long that's gonna be, but you're right, it's leaking, tiles are all brown. I think the last time I was talking to Moore, when they came in and said, we're leaking, I was like, go buy some tarp from Lowe's, lay it on the roof, at least have it catch some of the water, because it was seeping down into the walls. So we really are at, to me personally, a state of emergency when it comes to our roofs. We really are.
and for those of us that have been here for a considerable amount of time, we know that SP Morton was not constructed as the building we know it is right now. It was an open concept campus that had everything that is a hallway now was a breezeway. So everything was enclosed. So all of those inside walls were block concrete walls. So when you have invasion of water seeping into concrete, it's going to destabilize that concrete and mortar, and now you've got structural issues. And I think we're starting to see some of that.
We absolutely are seeing that.
But the funding part is not really in our hands, right?
Correct. We've made our requests based upon the needs that we know are present to the city, and that was in that capital improvement plan that we submitted with our budget. We had a capital improvement budget and then our annual operating budget that we submitted to the city. So that is in the city's hands. And unfortunately, we are at their mercy of being able to find funding for that.
So
Now-
possibly the city inspector might give us a little leverage.
Possibly, they could give the city some information from someone that they know understands that kind of stuff. That could give them information to make an informed decision when it comes to looking at funding that request. Any other questions for Dr. Carter?
I have a question, I guess it'd go into operations, but it's not, I don't know that Dr. Carter could answer it, maybe he can. It's about Charles Street Gym, but since we're talking about facilities, I was just wanting an update. I know we had, can I ask about that now?
Does the board have an?
We got some information from Mr. Teague last week about the prices to do what we want to do. And we're gonna have a Buildings and Grounds meeting probably the end of next week to go over that and then present it to the board.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank
Any
you,
other
everyone.
questions? Dr. Carter, I think you're good. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Moving right along, superintendent's report
Oh, wow, we are
with
really.
live and in person,
All
Dr.
right.
Sterling.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here, board members. This is the superintendent's report. Providing you with an update, we are having our introductory ceremony in person for our National Honor Society for all 3 schools. Date is Wednesday, the 27th at Franklin High School at 6 p.m. I don't know the number of candidates at this time, but everyone is excited to get back to in-person ceremonies, and we are too. So I hope that we get to see many of you there. Next, this is something that has been a project for my office as well as the data clerk's office. For the 2022-23 school year, we did online scheduling. And we not only did it at the high school, which we started last year, we did it at J.P. King, which is the middle school, this year. So the parents were able to go online with their student and actually register them for class for next year, select their courses for next year. So you have the information. It's on our website. Mr. Cowles did a wonderful job with the Twitter, Facebook. I mean, everything was out there. There was a video that was made giving parents direct instructions on click this, select that. It was really detailed, so I want to commend them, Nita Stratton, also for leading that work, for getting us digitalized as far as the registration process is concerned. So here you have the SP Morton, of course, is complete. We did that, the counselors, J.P. King, 6th and 7th grade, schedules are complete, and 75% of FHS schedules are complete. Where would we be without direction? This is something that we were working on for the past year and a half, trying to get our pre-pandemic, trying to get our strategic plan back online so we can make certain that we have a roadmap that we're following to ensure that our students, as well as our governance team, have goals and the objectives to make certain that we navigate and make certain that we are being successful in all of our endeavors, just bottom line. So we're going back to our planning of the strategic plan. We've contacted Ms. Gina Patterson, who is the Executive Director of VSBA. She is very excited. I meet with her next week along with the board chair. Thank you so much for agreeing to that, which I know that was something you were pushing with me. We got to get this done. We've got to get this done, and you're exactly right. So I'm glad we're moving forward with that. And that meeting's taking place around April 14th. So we're going to develop the timeline, bring it back to the board to agree on the timeline or make changes so we can move forward with our strategic plan. I'm very excited about that.
Can you pause there for just a second,
Go
Dr.
ahead.
Sterling? I will add, Dr. Sterling did say that this was something that we had started on a while back, and I think several members of the board had set in on those initial meetings that we had. And then about a year ago, we put the pause button on it for a little while, and we talked about it as a board, and some of that, we think some of the needs of the division, it was a very small conversation that we had, very quick conversation. Some of the needs that we needed to focus on as a division had changed because kids came back and we were starting to see different things. And given that there were some changes, Gina Patterson suggested hitting the reset button and starting over because moving on with that collective list that we had accumulated, some of those might have changed. Some of those priorities might have changed because the SWOT analysis, referring to the SWOT analysis. So that was a suggestion by her, and we, like I said, we briefly discussed it, and we thought that was a good idea. So that's where we're at. We're coming back to the table to start that process over again. I know we have some stakeholders that were involved in that are really looking forward to being part of that conversation moving forward. So I'm looking forward to getting that back up and running. Back to you, Dr. Sterling.
Thank you. Next, I'm very excited to present the Early Pathways Initiative for College Completion. It's called EPIC, and this is a collaborative partnership for student success with Camp Community College. This is something that we have been working on. When I say we, the Chief Academic Officer, my office, as well as the high school, have been working on for the past 3 years. And we've always had some barriers and some hurdles to jump through for the past 3 years, and some doors were closed and then they were opened up a little bit. But the last meeting we had, it was absolutely amazing with Dr. McCray and Dr. Atkins Brady. They sat down, took all of the ideas that we had, the vision for our students to increase dual enrollment, and they came back with a beautifully laid out plan. And I think between me and he's not here right now, Mr. Phelps, Ms. Burkhalter, Ms. Massenberg, we were in awe on how they really sat down and worked a schedule to ensure that our children would have more opportunities, not just for dual enrollment, but for workforce licensures as well. So this is it's called EPIC, and I want to give Dr. Atkins Brady credit for that because she came up with the name, and we thought it was epic. So we're going to kind of laugh about that. But it's the Early Pathways Initiative for College Completion, an extension of Camp Dual Enrollment programs. Will provide Franklin City Public School high school seniors, and this is what we wanted, with on-campus college experience at Camp Community College. EPIC framework, the EPIC program will satisfy requirements for it says the Uniform Certificate of General Studies, which we usually call the 1-year certificate. A student will complete between 31 and 32 credit hours. All courses are transferable to a 4-year college. They have put together a plan so a cohort of up to 30 Franklin City Public School high school students can participate in the pilot year, and we're looking for the pilot year to start in May, because summer school for colleges start May, early June, that's why. The FCPS cohort will take classes on the Franklin's campus and on the campus of Camp, Monday through Friday from 9:30 to 12:15. And it was so beautifully laid out that the students that participate in this program still will be able to go back to the high school, pick up another course to remain eligible for athletics and extracurricular programs. So that was a big concern, and that was all built into the plan. Every student in the cohort will receive advising and an individual plan for the one-year certificate, and tuition will follow the approved dual enrollment changes for the 22-23 school year. So the tuition amount won't be the same, won't change even if they want to just take a course, or if they were in a Vanguard program, or if they were in just a regular dual enrollment program. We will follow the same tuition guidelines that Camp Community College pushes out for us. There's one thing that's not on here. Camp, the barrier is that we could only have our juniors and seniors participate in this program. And we kept saying, we need our sophomores, we need our sophomores, we need our sophomores, because when you enter into your sophomore year, you have a greater opportunity of completing an associate's opposed to just a certificate. And Atkins Brady and the president turned around and said, we will open it up to your sophomores that have a 3.0 or better, with recommendation from the principal or the superintendent. I cannot tell you how excited I am about this. And if they start in their sophomore year, and this goes back to the proposal from Vanguard almost 3 years ago when we talked about CTE+, they will have time to build in a licensure course at the community college. So that would be anywhere from forklifting, communications, and medical license or whatever. So we're building that into the program as well, because we don't want them to just leave with, hey, I got transferable credits. We also want, hey, I got transferable credits, but I can work to pay for the last 2 years with this license. So I know I sound like I'm out of breath, but I'm telling you, we are so excited about this partnership. And we just want to thank Camp publicly for making certain that our students have that access and that equity that's needed to make certain that they leveled the playing field. So, yeah, any questions on that?
That's great. So now, let me get this right. So now we will have, for those students looking at something beyond just an advanced diploma or a standard diploma,
Correct.
for those kids that are looking for more, moving towards that college pathway, we've got Vanguard, we've got the dual enrollment general studies associate's degree pathway, we've got Passport, which is
18.
that 1 year,
18 credits.
right, 18 credits, and then now we will have EPIC on top of that.
Now you will have EPIC. Franklin City is so ahead of the curve. Now remember, for those that don't know, in the community that may be watching, Vanguard is an associate's degree that specializes in computer science. When the students graduate, they will graduate with a computer science degree. But wait a minute, here's the balloons and the fireworks. Kelsey Bunch and Travis Phelps, as well as Ale Massenberg, looked at the course catalog and lined them up, and noticed that if the students take 4 more classes, one in health, one in another computer class, which is like a beginner class, and 2 other classes, that they will not only graduate with a computer science degree from Tidewater Community College, they will graduate with a general studies degree from Camp Community College. And we actually have 2 students that are on that track to graduate this May with 2 different associate degrees.
Wow.
Amazing. Amazing.
I have a question. Is that Uniform Certificate of General Studies, is that what is
is all their general study courses. So there's like their math, their histories, all of their first year courses. Yes, sir, all of them will be transferable.
How's that compared to the other programs? Are they necessarily transferable?
Vanguard is, I know that.
All of them are at the community college level.
Right.
They all have matriculation agreements at the universities. And then I think there's just one or two, like when we were researching, like William and Mary, they may not have taken a math, or somebody else may not have taken a history. But other than that, they made certain that they had the agreement that they will be transferable.
And the passport is acceptable, the passport, which is those 18 credit hours, is accepted at all state universities as transferable. All in-state, all state supported
And I think that's the
universities.
key word in Virginia.
Right.
That we know of, yes, in Virginia. Thank you for that.
So you mentioned it would start in May. Are we providing transportation for these kids like over the summer? How does that work?
Yes, they put that in the MOU. I just gave you the highlights, but
Okay.
the transportation would be built in. We would definitely, we talked about if the students were seniors, would they have the ability to drive? Would we give them permission to do that? Of course, that will come from the parent. We will give them the option. If the parent allows them to, that's fine. We'll sign off on it. That was really it. The teachers would, the Camp Community College teachers would teach our kids a half a day, and then they would come back to our school to take other dual enrollment courses. So it really is a back and forth, but it is laid out so beautifully that they have, let's just say they do have courses at the college, and they have to get to the high school. They have like a 30-minute window, 22 to 30-minute window to get back to the high school. Right before lunch, they have lunch, and then they go into their other classes. So it's just a perfect schedule for our needs at this time. And the reason why I say we started in May, early June, is that SVE course. It's just like an introduction to
Right.
college course. So it's just an intro course. It's nothing like a heavy hit content area course, just getting their feet wet. So Ms. Bunch and the team, because she deals with all of our advanced academics at the high school, they're going to start looking at the number of kids, and they know they have about that 30 that they need, and having those parent meetings come up sometime at the end of the month, actually.
Awesome.
So they'd be ahead of the curve.
Any other questions on that? Because that was a big one.
And that is my report.
Sterling report.
I was waiting for that. I was waiting for that.
I needed to hear that. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Sterling. Next up, business by school board members. Does anyone have anything they wish to share?
I attended along with the chair lady, the Men with a Mission, and I was just really elated to see that and see that our young, I call them young gents, are getting positive direction and positive affirmation and a positive force to move forward.
Yes, I too. It was beautiful. It was beautiful seeing those young men. They carried themselves so confidently. It was really, really, really nice. Anything else? Bob and I had a long finance meeting.
Yeah.
But it was good, and you saw the results of all of that tonight. And know that when a lot of that comes to Bob and I when we are on finance, we really throw some questions out there when it comes to this stuff, and so that's how it gets weeded down. I mean, if y'all want to switch off and sit on finance, you're
I'm
more than
good.
willing to. You're more than glad to.
Good.
I think the problem that we have specifically this year, as Amy has talked about, and Jeff did too, that so much this stuff is not even finalized yet. So we're looking at 3 or 4 options, as we get near the end of the year, so.
And a great example, because Mr. Ryder brought that up, a great example on why not to go ahead and say, well, you know, when we look at this, they're coming close to being in line at the bottom line, so let's adjust for that. And we've seen it before where they had that with a built-in teacher raise, and then they scrapped the raise altogether in the budget. So, you know, we've seen that happen before. So I think we would be bad stewards if we went ahead and adjusted.
Is this timing typical though?
No,
Oh, it's not, okay.
no. And actually, they went back into session this week for the purpose of the budget
That's what I thought.
and didn't vote on the budget. So, and it has, it was over the, one time in the last 3 years, because it's been since Mr. Ryder has been here, where I know last year was June 30th, but I want to say it drug out longer than that. So it's not unusual. I hate to say it, but it just depends. It's gotten worse over the years. So, yeah. Anything else?
I did attend a meeting 2 weeks ago, and Senator Mark Warner is there, and Bobby Scott, Elaine Loria, and Louise Lucas. And Senator Warner said that in his opinion, being on the school board was the toughest job in Virginia right now. So we appreciated that.
Yep, and I know I was not in attendance, but I have heard that out of that meeting that it was stated by one of the state representatives that was there that there were raises for teachers in the budget this year, but no one wanted to step out on a limb and say that that it was a fully funded mandate. So, then there's that. But we are still advocating. We are still advocating with our budget for raises for our wonderful teachers this year. Anything else? You know you can't get out of a meeting without me having a couple of things. As everyone is aware, we had a previously scheduled joint session with the city last week that we recommended postponing because we really had nothing new. Our budget request still stood as it was. And we got word back that it was canceled. So I've had a conversation back with the mayor, and I feel confident that a request will come to us because that's how I left it with the mayor, that I felt like given the conversation that we did need to have a joint session, and told him just to let us know when and what he wanted that to look like, whether it needed to be both of our entire entities, or we've had smaller meetings before where it was like the chair and the vice chair and the superintendent and head of finance and then those respective entities from the city. So I've given that to the mayor to come back to us and let us know how he would like to proceed with that, if he would. Next 2x2s, because we've been into that now for a couple of weeks. As you may remember at our last meeting, Mr. Johnson was here from the city. I emailed, and I had a follow-up email that I sent as well back in March, wanting to know if they had come up with a date yet for the next 2x2, and then asked Mr. Johnson if he could follow up as well with scheduling that, and I still have not heard anything back.
I have a quick question about if we go back to the canceled joint session, and you had said that we recommended postponing it because we didn't have anything new. But then after it got canceled, you say now that you feel like we need to have the meeting. So has there been like something that's transpired that you?
The conversation that I had with the mayor, some of the statements that he made, taking what he said, I told him, I said, well, given what you're saying, it sounds like to me that yes, the city has some questions and concerns and items you would like to discuss. then absolutely, I think there should be a joint meeting. And he said, it sounds like it to me too. I said, okay, then.
Gotcha. So there's nothing really new on our end, but
No.
we could help by clarifying questions that
Right.
they have.
Right.
All right, so now we're
Questions,
just waiting to
concerns,
know when
right.
it's, okay, gotcha.
Right, that's it.
Okay.
Good? Good with that one?
Yeah.
Okay. The next city council meeting, which should be the one, well, not the next one, because they have one coming up Monday, where the one where they would make the budget adjustment that we just passed, where that would be on their agenda, would be on, let me look at my handy dandy calendar, because I'm not a walking calendar by any means, would be on the 25th, which is a Monday night. That night is also the evening of the VSBA Spring Forum. Was anyone planning to attend the Spring Forum? If not, I don't mind going to that. I've done it before, and I really find it good to interact with the other board members. It's a little less of a formal setting, and I have not looked completely at the program, but usually they have local representatives there as well to discuss feedback on budget, state budget. So, Ms. Moore, I will attend that if you will get me signed up for that. What I would ask is if any board member is able to that evening, if they could attend the council meeting, since I won't be able to be in two places at one time because I haven't figured out how to clone myself yet. I know there are people researching and working on that, but I don't think we've made progress in that yet. I think that's all I have. I think that's all I have. I will speak for the high school. I am not a sports fanatic by any means at all. Wrestlers, we had them here at the last meeting. They had a great turnout at States. The soccer team is doing exceptionally well this year. Baseball, softball, not quite sure because I don't keep up with them.
They are playing their hearts out. And they have amazing sportsmanship across the board. Their JV and their varsity teams. But to kind of give you some background, like the JV team, the JV softball team this year, their very first game, they played against Southampton at Southampton. And for many of the girls on our JV team, that was their very first softball game ever. Not for this season, but first game ever. And they're playing against kids that have been playing softball like in the county since they were 8 years old. So for our girls to get out there and like learning the game and learning positions, it was just amazing to see. Like, they didn't give up. And they walked away with their heads held high. They didn't win. It was 33-0. But they played, and they didn't give up, and they had smiles, and they went to practice the next day, and they're willing to learn more. So I have to say that I have been just amazed by watching both baseball and softball, seeing what they have to overcome to play these other teams where they have people who've been playing for years and years and years. So, yeah.
And tennis is doing well. I've been following that a little bit. The tennis team is doing well. And that's another one of those sports where a lot of times these young men and women, the first time they step foot on a court is on the high school tennis team.
That's right.
So, yeah, they're doing well. And then I think that covers all springs. Oh, track. Track and field. We've actually had, because sometimes I get the pleasure of listening to the afternoon announcements at the high school from the parking lot. And we've actually had some young individuals that this is their first year on the track team, and they are doing amazingly well, like placing first place, coming close to breaking records and things, qualifying for states already. So the track team is doing really, really well. I think that's all a spring sport. Oh, theater is doing another production. they are starting work on that. They had auditions this week, started auditions this week. So they're looking at final production for the year, probably late May. And I am not being allowed to know any details about what the theme of this production will be, but I understand it's supposed to be some kind of mystery.
It's probably why you don't know. They're keeping it mysterious.
They're doing a great job.
There you go.
And then I think the last one would be robotics. Not that I'm supporting them or anything, but robotics is at district competition. Starting, actually, they did load in yesterday. Qualifying matches start today and run through Saturday. And districts in robotics is different than districts in everything else, because when you think districts, you're thinking the small little area that we're in. Districts for robotics is the entire Delmarva region. So it's Virginia, it's Maryland, it's the DC area, it's Delaware. I think even part of upper North Carolina as well. So it's like 60 teams that are competing at Hampton Coliseum for the next, including today, 4 days. They got off to a rocky start today, but they've done that before, where the audition, the dress rehearsal doesn't go so great, and then they just blow it out of the water from here forward. So we're going to hope that happens as well. Next 3 days, because today, tomorrow, Saturday. So we are sending them much love and support.
I think they would really like to add more students.
Absolutely.
Even Southampton and the college students, if they want to join.
College can't because they're under VHSL now. So VHSL governs a lot of that, so they can't. There has been conversations because of they need numbers about looking at Southampton. They had literally in like the last week, they've had several students that have stepped forward that have expressed some interest. I think one thing that would benefit them with numbers is, and I know Dr. Sterling has talked about this before, re-implementing Lego League and the FRC at the elementary and the middle school level. And I know we've got some students from our Men with a Mission ceremony that we attended that are interested in engineering and technology-based stuff. So that may be an opportunity for us to get into the elementary school and do like an extracurricular fair where they can see things like robotics. And I know robotics is talking about doing some community-based appearances as well. I don't know if they'll be able to get everything in for Spring Fest, but they're looking at the Lumberjack Festival, maybe Fall Festival, looking at maybe some outreach programs during the summer to get that interest in. Because I'm going to tell you, I went several years ago to my first robotics meet. I was like, I'll just go see what this is about. And it is like a nerd celebration. That's the best way I can describe it.
No, it's not.
And it is fun. It is.
Yes,
it
but
is
that doesn't make
addictive.
it a nerd celebration.
But it is fun. They're all geeky students.
No, they're not.
In a neat way.
They're not. They're not. So I will say that Yana has done a fabulous job at trying to reach out and get other people. Because when you think of robotics, you think of like these machines, right? And some students might have this idea that it's just a bunch of geeks and nerds. Anyway, he reached out and he said, look, I need people to collect data. Like, I need data collectors. And, kids, said, I can do that. I can look at numbers and find, the strengths and stuff. And I thought,
I need human players. So I
Yeah,
need somebody that
yeah.
can shoot like basketballs.
right, so he's, reaching out in different ways, and these kids are realizing, maybe there's a part of that I can do, and, that does matter to me. So, I think that's great. There are a lot of things. There's usually a safety captain. So if you've got somebody who's looking to do, that sort of thing, there's so many different pieces to that, and Yana is like really being creative in how he tries to recruit people. So you don't have
We need
you don't
people-
have to be a geek or a nerd.
Okay, I retract my statement.
Thank you.
I have a question for Dr. Sterling. Do any of our normal courses for students, I don't know which grade level, but do they have hands-on labs with that address robotics?
Yeah, you know, we had the Dream Maker and all of that down, the Makerspace at the elementary school, and you know, Mr. Singh does a wonderful job making certain that kids create things in engineering, engineering
But it's part of their
platform.
regular
Oh, yeah,
coursework.
which is a part of, yeah, it's an elective actually that they rotate to.
Okay.
But I do agree that when I'm thinking of robotics, it's something that we may have to start building into their schedule. Like, you know, instead of a study period for Vanguard, who does the computer coding, maybe they need to have a period of robotics to really support that program and get involved in it. So there's a couple of things we can do. We were talking about it, so that'll be for the upcoming year.
Because I mean, Carrie does have a good point. I mean, it's just going to be a continuous march. I mean, I know for our generation,
Yeah.
computers was like, you know, kind of novel for us, but it's just becoming, I think it's more than just the computer aspect. It is it's the integration, the robotics, and subtle things. And I just think it'd be great
Yeah.
if our students from a young age can just have some hands-on experience, just see how it applies to everyday
Yeah,
life.
one of the great things about the robotics team, so it's not all about computer coding. Like Carrie was saying, there's other things, but so maybe I like working on cars. Well, in robotics, you're building a drivetrain. So, you know, you can relate that back to the mechanics
Right.
that you use to work
It's
on
very
a car.
broad scope.
So it's an
Yeah.
integration.
It is.
Yes,
It
exactly.
is.
Yeah.
Yep, it's so many different facets that go in media, because I know of one person on the team that has gotten tapped to do media. So, you know, Spirit, they were making buttons the other night. I know that sounds like really, but they really get into, that's another, because they get an award for Spirit. So, you know, there's one team that wears yellow cheese foam hats. That's because that's their thing. That's their motto. So, yeah, it's a lot of different aspects. Some of these teams are like over 100 students, because they get into those little facets within it, and that's what they do. This sect does media. This sect does promotion. This sect does recruitment.
And to put it in perspective, we have 3 students
Wow.
on the robotics team. So we are out there competing and doing well in a lot of cases with 3 students. So, yeah, kudos to them.
Well, I was not to drag this out longer, but when we had, you know, the art, regarding the art, the students' art, you know, we have a lot of talented artists in our schools. Tying in some of those groups in with the robotics team or other groups that need, what do you call it, spirit or promotion, you know, that kind of thing, some of the crossover.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because a lot of the kids that participate in robotics are also the same kids that participate in other activities together because they're very close knit.
Right.
That's all I have. I didn't mean to go on a robotics tirade, but here we are. Anything else?
And we have to get through important dates and then the minutes for review before we can get to the other
Yes.
things. So important
So,
dates to
okay.
remember.
I'll hit the fast forward
I
button.
think I heard nerds need to.
Early release day tomorrow. I know a reverse 911 went out today on that. And then the following Friday starts spring break. Not for me, but for everybody else. As they all dance in the audience. And then once we get back, shortly after we get back, report cards will go out, and our next meeting is on the 28th. And then we we have coming up, just as a reminder, in May. Make sure you've got on your calendars because 100% attendance is expected. The VSBA self-evaluation. We will be in the conference room, and VSBA will be joining us remotely for that. All right, next up, minutes for review, just for review, not to be voted on tonight. And then 9.1.
I second.
We have a motion to adjourn and we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries. Thank you very much.